Hello, my name is Lyndon Mukasaart, and I am a self-taught artist, and I am here to tell you about Mukasaart. I would describe my art as something that is imaginative and creative, something that I always try to tell a story with and to capture the viewer's imagination. Is something that I like to think that would give someone who's looking at it a bit of inspiration. It would make people interested in what is being told there, what they're seeing, and also it will get them interested in whatever the characters of the world it is creating and putting together. Since I was young, I've been drawing. Art runs in the family. My brothers, my mum and dad, they're also very good artists in their own right. My grandfather, my aunt, as well. They've shown artistic tendencies. So it's always been something that is there. Um, and as I've gotten older, I mean, I've done art in bits and pieces in between my own studies and in between work and everything, and it's something that I hope to, at least in one form or another, always do for the rest of my life. Um, as I've drawn and gotten older, I've developed different styles and always enjoyed experimenting with different mediums. So drawing has always been something that has interested in me, and trying to get better, particularly over the last few years as well. I've had an increased interest in at least trying to do something a bit more serious with it and trying to push my skills and abilities to the next level. So it's something that has is always part of me and something that I'm always trying to perfect and get better at. So and that's how I describe my with regards to art. This one's an interesting question, actually. How in terms of creating complex pieces and complex worlds, I mean, I'm always trying to think of how I can make my drawings interesting. So for me, when I'm looking at my artwork, I only like to draw what I find personally interesting to me. So I've been influenced by cartoons and computer games like Final Fantasy. I've been influenced by, I mean, things like Dragon Ball Z and other comics and other types of things. And one of the things I always look at when I'm seeing those type of pieces of art is how complex and how interesting their worlds look, how much depth that it has, and I always try to reflect that in my own artwork. And um, I mean, for a lot of my pieces, always feel I could make it even more complicated. The truth is that when I see some of them, um, yeah, that I've put together, it's only after I've finished it then more ideas pour in. Another aspect of that is I always have ideas in my head. Some drawings I haven't drawn in years. Or I didn't put together for years because it's been floating around in my head from for years, and it's only when I felt I've reached a certain point or a certain skill level that I'll try and render it out or put it together. So and the more time that I spent thinking about it, or the more time it's been floating around my head, the more ideas that I have that builds on it and builds on it until I end up drawing and putting it together. One thing a lot of people say about my artwork that comes up a lot is the colors that they enjoy seeing. So I think I'm quite strong in that, but I actually want to improve even better amplifying even more details that I have in my artwork. So if if you think it's complicated or looks more complex, I mean, I in my head I have an even bigger or grander vision for a lot of the pieces that I've put together, and I hope to continue to develop and make it even more complicated and even more in depth, but also more interesting and engaging for people to look at as well. When people look at my artwork, if I could choose what people could feel about it, well, it depends on the piece or what I've drawn. So, but in general, over general thing, I would like them to um, become interested in the characters and feel interested in the world that I've created. Um, so some drawings, for example, they a lot of them are quite happy scenes. So if it makes people happy, then um, it served its purpose. There's one particular piece that I've created that I'm particularly pleased with, called "The Monster That Controls the World," where I specifically asked people who commented to give their thoughts on it and how what they think it is telling them. And because of the menacing visual of that drawing, I did enjoy the fact that a lot of people picked up on that. That there's it's to do with challenging something or fighting against some kind of force, whether it's in a form of anxiety or the troubles in the world or some problem in the world like climate change. I enjoyed the idea that people can draw from, even if it's a general theme, they can draw many different ideas out of it. So what I enjoy with my artwork is getting people to think, and if it can make people feel different things, then I'm very pleased about that, because it gives them a strong impression. It means that the art I've created is creates a strong impression for viewers to look at, and that's the best thing that I could hope for with any piece that I put together, that I create. Another aspect as well is that I would like people to look at the artwork and it, even if it inspires them to create their own work, or inspires them to think about whatever theme is being put forward, um, then I would be pleased with that as well. So that is how I, at least in my mind, how I intend for my artwork to be, to make people feel. I actually have two favorite pieces that I've created so far. But before I go into that, what's interesting is that for a lot of the drawings I do, because I always feel that there's something more I could add to it, it's very hard for me to um, feel that they're my favorite or reach the vision that I had in my head. But the two that I have is, one is called the African Mystic, which I use on my profile picture on Instagram, and it is a drawing, one of those few drawings that the way it looked in my head came out perfectly on paper, and in some ways it came out even better than how I originally planned it. It's one of the few drawings that came out better to me than how I planned it, in terms of the colors and how I drew it and the angle. And even as I was drawing it, more ideas came. I love that drawing because of the colors and the way everything just came together. Is one of my favorite drawings that I've done so far. The second drawing that is also my favorite is, as I mentioned before, the monster that controls the world. It went to plan perfectly in terms of how I had it in my head. In fact, in some ways, it started accidentally from a quick 5-minute doodle with a pen or pencil, where I just scratched together something, and then I looked at it and thought, "Ah, it looks interesting." And then as I added more layers and more complexity to it, it looked even more interesting. And then I thought, if I could do really get the background and details done right, it could really be look like something special, at least to me, as far as I saw it. And I spent a lot of time on that drawing in particular because I wanted to get it right. It was one of the first times I tried to draw a galaxy scene or space nebula before, and painted it. So I spent a full week before finishing the drawing a separate drawing just of a galaxy nebula, just so that I can perfect it and put it on the background of the drawing behind the monster that was holding the world. And I think it enhanced it so much because I do like space as well as space and science. So this really helped it appeal in its appeal to me and what I was trying to bring out. And then the monster itself with the details and how I wanted it to look against, in contrast to the people, the three people that I drew holding pencils to oppose it. So I was that's another drawing that just came out perfectly for me, and it's what, along with the African Mystic, is my favorite drawing that I've done so far, and hopefully there'll be many more that I put together in the future. Yes, behind me, these are paintings that I did about 8 or 9 years ago. Um, this was for an art show that um, me and a few others students had organized. We were part of, because we're half Grenadian. We were part of the Grenada Diaspora Youth Forum, and we did an art show to promote Grenada's heritage and culture in London. And these are some of the paintings. I'm going to try and turn the camera around so you can see them that I did. Um, so I did. These were entirely acrylic and paintings that I did. At the time, I was trying to capture some of my favorite scenes of Grenada. So, for example, the flamboyant tree. Here, I hope it's shown in the camera. The flamboyant tree and roads. I really enjoyed these scenes in Grenada, which is when I was a student, I would go for walks around the country and see the place. I always enjoyed Grenada and the Caribbean scenery, and that's an important part of my heritage and some of what influences my artwork as well as my African heritage, my Ugandan side as well, which influenced the African mystic drawing that I did. That's on my profile picture as well. Um, so I did these years about 8 or 9 years ago, and as as you can see, I still. I mean, I perfected some aspects of my art, but if I were to do a repaint of these again today, which I might do one day actually, it would look I'm a lot more advanced. I would like to do something. I do have something in my head actually to do with the flamboyant tree, which is my favorite tree in the Caribbean, but my favorite type of plant or tree there, just because of the scenes that it creates. And if you do get a chance to visit the Caribbean, particularly Grenada, of course, do check out the flamboyant tree as well. For the most part, it kind of depends. I don't really zone out when doing my drawings and trying to color in or anything like that. Um, at the same time, I wouldn't say I necessarily. Sometimes I plan, and sometimes I don't. It all depends on the drawing that I'm doing, and some drawings that I've done are a mixture of planning and and adding stuff as I go along as well. So it's always a mixture. In terms of zoning out, I find that difficult. My brain is always ticking. It's always thinking about something. I can draw when I'm talking with my mum. Draw when I'm talking with my brother. Um, Draw if I'm chatting on the phone. So it's uh, it's something that I not particularly difficult to do. So that's how I tend to plan my art, or do my art generally, and it just comes together. And because I do it in segments and over where I take breaks and come back to it, where I improve it, then it looks a lot better as a result. And I don't necessarily. I can work on errors that I've made. I can work on improving something as I go along as well, and that's how I tend to work on my art. In terms of if my life was a book, I mean it's a difficult one because life goes in phases, I suppose. But I suppose I'll call it the journey, um, an ongoing work, a work in progress, or something like that. It will have to be along those lines, in terms of where I want to be at some point in the future, and what I'm working towards. And I'm working on a lot of different things at the moment, not just art based, but other things. So it would be so there's other things that will be realized in the future. In terms of remembering me, personally, I mean, I haven't given too much thought to that. If it happens, that's nice, but I would like my work to be more remembered more so. So even if they don't know who created the work, if what I've created is even more influential, so to speak, and could outlive these in some way, shape, or form, or has a longer legacy, that would be quite pleasing for me in terms of my work. So if there's a distinctive style that I create, that it has its own identity, then that would be fantastic. In terms of where people can find my work, I'm on Instagram with Mukasaart, um, where Mukasaarts. So if you find that, and then I'm also working on a website, which I'll put in a link on my Instagram account as well for Mikasa Arts as well. In terms of advice to artists, what I would give them is to the first thing is to find something that you enjoy to drawing. Artists, from my perspective, it should always be fun, and you should always find something to draw, and practice working on it. But with that said, practice doesn't always make perfect, even though a lot of people say that. Because if you don't know what you're doing, then you can end up practicing and embedding bad habits as well. So my advice is, especially if you're very new to drawing and art as a whole, um, look go you there are plenty of tutorials online, free tutorials on websites, blogs, on YouTube. Look up, just Google how to draw an arm, how to draw a flower, how to draw a plane, anything, and practice using the methods there, and even combine methods and see what works and what doesn't. Art, part of the fun of art is you get to experiment with different methods, and through experimentation you'll develop your own style and your own flavor, that you put in your own work as well. So, in terms of progressing your artwork, that is my advice for you in terms of what you need to do, and be consistent as well. Be consistent and be patient, because you're not going to develop those skills or to the level overnight. It just doesn't happen. So in the meanwhile, all you can do is at least try and draw something every day, at least one thing, even if it's a simple doodle. Try and practice something with your colors if you're looking to develop your coloring in techniques. Do gesture drawing so you can create interesting gestures. Right now, I'm working on drawing characters with interesting expressions. I'm practicing that so I can create more dynamic and interesting expressions, because you never really stop learning with art. It's a constant journey. So my advice for you is to be patient and be consistent, because when you're consistent and you're patient with yourself and you don't rush expecting to be amazing and spectacular overnight, then you're more likely to be amazing and spectacular at least at some point. That's the best way to look at it. And you can even do comparative drawings. So if you draw one thing that you find particularly difficult, wait a few months or even a year from now, which is what I'm doing right at the moment, and draw it again. And you'll be able to see what you've learnt and what you've improved on. And I think that is a way that you can progress and develop your art consistently. So have fun with it. Pick out things that you enjoy drawing or that you like to look at. Practice it, but also look up tutorials, practice that, and also have patience and be consistent.